A real estate agent handed me a flyer last weekend at an open house. Glossy, folded in thirds, smelled faintly of toner. The headline across the top said, "Your starter home awaits." The photo was a 1,500 square foot split level with original windows and a kitchen that hadn't been updated since the Clinton administration. The price underneath the photo was $749,900. I stared at it for a solid 30 seconds before my brain could even process the phrase starter home sitting above the number 749,900. In what universe is $750,000 a starter anything? A starter yacht, maybe? A starter beach house in Malibu? Not a fixer-upper in a regular suburban cul-de-sac where the neighbors have a trampoline. My name is Nick, and today we're going to run the actual math on who can afford a $750,000 house in 2026, because the real estate industry has clearly lost the ability to use words correctly, and somebody needs to sit down with a calculator and figure out what is actually happening here. And before you scroll away because $750K isn't on your radar, stay with me. This video is especially for you, because what's happening at this price point is the canary in the coal mine for every price point below it. The same distortions breaking 750K homes today broke 500K homes 3 years ago, and they'll break 400K homes by 2029. If you want to see where your market is heading, watch what's happening to this one. The math doesn't stay in its lane. Let's start with what $750,000 actually gets you, because the number alone is almost meaningless until you see it. Right now, in Arlington, Virginia, there is a once-in-100 square foot house built in 1957. The listing photos show original tile in the bathroom. The kitchen is described as having great bones, which is real estate code for rip it out. The home inspection notes the roof has about 2 years left. It's listed at $799,000. Somebody will pay asking. Somebody already has. That house is not an anomaly. It's the median in Arlington. It's also the median in Fairfax and parts of Boston, in coastal San Diego, in most of Seattle, in Boulder, and in nearly any zip code within commuting distance of New York or San Francisco that isn't currently on fire. In San Francisco itself, $750K doesn't even get you a house. It gets you a 600 square foot, 1-bedroom condo with shared laundry in the basement. That is the American dream in 2026. Now let's do the down payment math, because this is where most people's home ownership dreams quietly expire. 20% down on a $750,000 house is $150,000. Let me say that one more time so it really lands. $150,000 in cash, just sitting there, ready to wire to a title company. The Federal Reserve puts the median American household's transaction account balance at around $8,000. So you're not a little short on the down payment. You're $142,000 short. You could drain the median household's entire savings account 18 times over and still not be close. If you somehow save 15% of your gross income every year, which almost no one actually does, you're banking roughly $12,500 annually on the median income. At that pace, it takes you 12 years to hit 20% down, assuming housing prices don't move, which they will, and assuming nothing in your life goes wrong, which it also will. Here's a statistic that'll sit with you for the rest of the day. The median age of a first-time homebuyer in America in 2025 hit 40 years old. 40. Your parents were paying off their house by the age most people now buy their first one. Your grandparents owned 2 houses by 40. This isn't a generational stereotype. This is Bureau of Labor and National Association of Realtors data, and it is the highest median age ever recorded since they started tracking it. The American adulthood timeline has been pushed back by roughly a full decade, and nobody's really sitting with what that means yet. So most people skip the 20% down payment because, obviously, they put 10% down or 5% or even 3% on certain loan products, and they immediately meet a new friend called PMI, Private Mortgage Insurance. On a $750K loan, this runs between $200 and $450 per month depending on your credit score. It is insurance that protects the bank, not you, and you're paying for it, and it follows you around until your loan hits 78% of the original value, which on a 30-year mortgage takes roughly 9 years. 9 years of paying a monthly fee that exists entirely because you weren't wealthy enough to avoid it. It's a small recurring tax for the inconvenience of being normal. Let's say you put 10% down, which is $75,000, which is already aggressive. Your loan is $675,000. At current mortgage rates hovering around 3%, your monthly principal and interest comes out to about $4,177. That's just the number the bank charges you for the right to sleep in the house. Now add property taxes. Because the United States does not have one property tax rate, it has 50 of them, and they range from tolerable to felonious. In New Jersey, on a $750K home, you're paying $12,000 to $16,000 a year. In Illinois, around $13,800. In Texas, about $9,200 to $12,000. In California, thanks to Proposition 13, roughly $50,000 to $50,000, which sounds great until you remember the house costs $750,000. Split the difference and call it $6,750 a year at the new national average. That's another $563 a month onto your payment. Next, homeowners insurance, which used to be a quiet line item and is now a featured antagonist in the American financial horror movie. Insurance premiums have risen 57% since 2019. In 2025 alone, they jumped another 12%. In Florida, the average premium is now well north of $8,000 a year. In Louisiana, nearly $6,000. In parts of California, major insurers like State Farm and Allstate have stopped writing new policies entirely, which dumps homeowners onto the state's last resort plan, which costs more and covers less. On a $750,000 home, nationally, you're budgeting $4,500 to $5,500 per year, another $400 a month, and it goes up every single year. Insurance now accounts for roughly 9% of the typical monthly mortgage payment, which is the highest share ever recorded, and climate change is, to borrow an industry term, just getting warmed up. Let me snap you out of the numbers for a second because I can feel your eyes glazing. A friend of mine just closed on a house in the Boston suburbs, 1,400 square feet. Built in 1962. 3 bedrooms if you count the one you can barely fit a twin bed in. The inspection said the roof had about 2 years left, the electrical panel was from the Carter administration, and the basement flooded twice in the last 5 years. They paid $789,000, over asking, in a bidding war, against 7 other offers. They are both attorneys. They have a combined income that would make you uncomfortable if I said it out loud. And the first thing she told me after closing was, quote, "I don't know how we're going to afford to actually live in it." That is the sentence I want you to hold in your head for the rest of this video. Which brings us to maintenance, the line item everyone forgets about until a tree falls on the garage at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. The standard rule is 1% of the home's value per year. On $750K, that's $7,500 a year, but the real number is often higher, especially because the median American home is now 40 years old, the same age as the average first-time buyer, which is its own kind of poetry. Zillow and Thumbtack peg the real annual hidden cost of homeownership at around $16,000 per year once you include taxes, insurance, and maintenance together. When things actually break, it's catastrophic. New roof, $15,000 to $30,000. New HVAC, $7,000 to $14,000. New windows, $10,000 to $20,000. Foundation repair, pick a number between $2,000 and your soul. Budget roughly $625 a month for maintenance on average, and pray that the previous owner wasn't hiding something behind the weirdly placed decorative wall in the basement. Now let's stack everything up. Mortgage principal and interest, $4,177. Property taxes, $563. Insurance, $400. Maintenance, $625. PEMI, $280. Total monthly housing cost, roughly $6,045. $6,000 a month, and that's in a middle tax state with no hurricanes, no wildfires, and nothing breaking. In New Jersey, with real insurance, you're pushing $7,000. In coastal Florida, same. The old financial guideline says housing shouldn't exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. To spend $6,045 a month at 28%, you need to be earning roughly $259,000 a year. Even under the looser 36% debt to income rule, you still need to be making around $201,000. And what percentage of American households earn $200,000 or more? About 12 to 13%. The top eighth of the country. That is the pool of people who can comfortably afford a $750,000 home. Not 80%, not half, 12%. So who's buying these houses? Because they keep selling, the neighborhoods keep filling up, somebody is winning those bidding wars. Here's the honest answer. The share of first-time buyers in 2020-25 fell to 21%, the lowest ever recorded. Most 750K buyers today are repeat buyers rolling equity from a previous home, or tech workers with stock packages, or people getting a gift from their parents, which almost a quarter of young buyers now receive. Or they're dual income professionals making $300K combined. Or they're quietly living through a slow-motion financial catastrophe disguised as home ownership. Which brings us to a couple I want you to meet. Meet a couple we'll call the Bennetts. Two working professionals in a high-cost metro, combined household income of $250,000. That puts them in roughly the top 10% of American households. On paper, they're winning. They closed on a $750,000 home 6 months ago with 10% down, a story they told at a dinner party where everyone nodded and said congratulations. Their take-home pay after taxes, FICA, and maxing out both of their 401ks is about $11,200 a month. Their housing cost is $6,045, so they have 5 155s left. One child in daycare is $2,800 a month. 2 car payments, $1,300. Insurance and gas, $550. Groceries, $1,300. Utilities, $450. Student loans from the degrees that qualified them for these jobs, $800. Health insurance the employer doesn't fully cover, $400. Phones and internet, $250. Added up, they are $3,000 in the red every single month. Before a single pair of kids' shoes. Before a date night. Before the dishwasher breaks. So here is what $250,000 a year actually looks like in their house. On Sunday at the grocery store, she puts back the package of strawberries because they're $7 and she already has apples at home. He drives 40 minutes out of his way to return a shirt that didn't fit because the $23 matters now, and 6 months ago it wouldn't have. They have an ongoing, unresolved argument about whether to repair the dishwasher or live without it until the tax refund comes in March. She tells her sister on the phone that they're fine, and then she sits in the car in the Target parking lot for 11 minutes before going in, because going in means spending. Money. He checks the bank balance before he orders a pizza. Not every time, just the times when payday is still 5 days out. They are, by every external measure, succeeding. They drive nice-ish cars. They live in a good school district. They wear the costume of the upper middle class. And they are 3 months from a problem they can't solve. Here's the part that breaks them. She's pregnant. The baby arrives in 6 months. Daycare for 2 kids in their market is $5,000 a month, which is more than their mortgage. The math, which was already bad, becomes literally impossible. One of them is going to quit work or drop to part-time. The second income they use to qualify for the mortgage is about to shrink or vanish. And the mortgage doesn't care. The mortgage sends the same bill every month regardless of what their family looks like. That is the conversation they haven't had yet. It's coming. She knows. He knows. Neither of them wants to say it out loud, because saying it out loud means admitting that the house, the thing they worked toward for a decade, might have been a mistake. And here is where the data catches up with the anecdote. According to a 2025 Goldman Sachs retirement survey, 40% of people earning between $300,000 and $500,000 a year say they live paycheck to paycheck. Read that again. 40% of half-millionaires feel broke. It's not because they're buying yachts, it's because the cost of participating in normal upper-middle-class American life, which now includes a $750K house, has inflated past what even very high incomes can comfortably absorb. There's a whole demographic for this. They're called Henrys, high earners, not rich yet. And the not rich yet part does enormous heavy lifting because for a meaningful chunk of them, the yet never actually arrives. They earn excellent money, they spend every dollar of it, they go to bed stressed about money because they are in fact stressed about money because the house is eating them alive. Now let's talk about what happens when people ignore all of this and stretch anyway, because plenty of them do. The data is already telling the story. Fall mortgage delinquencies just hit 11.5%, the highest level since 2021. Foreclosure starts in the first quarter of 2026 were up 20% year over year. Bank repossessions were up 45%. And guess which vintage of loans is performing the worst? It's the 2022 and 2023 loans, the ones originated at peak unaffordability by people who stretched to the absolute edge of qualification, betting on a raise or a refinance that never came. A recent survey found that 65% of recent buyers have regrets about their purchase, 73% of first-time buyers. The top regret, cited by more than 40% of them, is that hidden costs and maintenance ended up far higher than they expected. Nobody is shocked that the mortgage payment is the mortgage payment. What crushes them is everything else. Let me paint the picture of what this actually looks like 5 years from now. Because the mortgage paperwork is signed in one afternoon and the consequences last 3 decades. It's 2031. You're 44, you've been in the house 6 years, the kids are in middle school now, the water heater is making a sound you've been pretending not to hear for 8 months. Your savings account has $8,000 in it, the same $8,000 it had 2 years ago, because every time you build it up, something pulls it back down. The roof needs to be replaced in the next 2 years, and the quote was $22,000, and you don't have $22,000. You turned down a promotion last year because it was in a different city, and selling the house would be a disaster at current rates. Your friends who rent went to Portugal last summer. You canceled the family vacation because property taxes went up again. You lie in bed at night doing roof math. From the outside, you look like you're winning. From the inside, you are working a job you would leave in a week if you didn't have this house. And the wildest part is, we keep calling this the American dream. So let me give you permission to do something almost nobody will say out loud. You can just not buy the house. You can run the numbers, see that they don't work, and walk away. You can keep renting. You can rent for 5 years, 10 years, however long it takes for something to shift, whether that's your income, the rates, or the market itself. Renting is not throwing money away. Paying a mortgage you cannot actually afford is also throwing money away, just with extra steps and worse consequences when it collapses. Home equity is not the only way to build wealth. A $150,000 down payment invested in a total market index fund at historical average returns grows to roughly $2.6 million over 30 years. Plus, the monthly difference between renting and owning invested adds another $4.5 million over the same period. That is not a rounding error. That is a fundamentally different retirement. The math does not require you to own a house. The culture does. Which brings me to the only part of this conversation I genuinely have feelings about. Owning a home is woven into American identity in a way that is almost religious. Your grandparents owned one. Your parents owned one. You were told your whole life that owning a home is what adults do. But your grandparents bought their home for roughly twice their annual income. Your parents bought theirs for roughly 3 times. You are being asked to buy a home for 9 times your income, at higher interest rates, with insurance that goes up every year in a labor market where your job may not exist in. 5 years. That is not the same transaction. We are using the same word for 2 completely different things. Owning a home in 1985 and owning a home in 2026 are not comparable experiences, and the fact that we still use the same word for both is how people end up signing paperwork. They'll regret for a decade. So here is the real take. If you are a dual income household earning $260,000 or more, you have a real down payment, you work in a stable industry, and you've run the full math, including taxes, insurance, and maintenance for your specific state, then yes, a $750,000 house can work for you. You are part of that top 10 to 12% for whom the numbers actually line up. If you are below that, or if any one of those conditions is shaky, the house will own you. That is not a moral failing. It is not a sign that you didn't work hard enough. It means the current math on this specific price point in this specific decade doesn't fit your financial life. And the grown-up move is to recognize that before you sign, not after. But here's what I want you to actually take away from all of this, and it's the thing almost nobody in the housing conversation is willing to say out loud. This was never really a video about $750,000 houses. It's a video about what an entire wage class is still allowed to own in this country. In 1985, a public school teacher could afford a house in most of America. In 2026, a physician can't, in half of it. The line for participation in the middle-class wealth-building project has moved up by an entire professional tier in one generation. Nurses, teachers, electricians, cops, the people who hold the country together have been quietly reclassified as too poor to own a home in the regions where their work is most needed. That is not a personal finance problem. That is a structural redefinition of what ownership means, and we haven't actually had the conversation about it yet. The mortgage industry has no reason to bring it up. The real estate industry has no reason to bring it up. So it falls to people running the numbers at their kitchen table, one at a time, to notice what has happened. Run your own numbers. Be honest about what you see. And if the math doesn't work, that's not you failing the system. That's the system telling you the truth.